Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Anna Gawel of DevEx, Sabastian Niles of Salesforce, and Dr. Nasser Alkahtani of the Arab Gulf Program for Development.
Everyone, thank you for being here on Beyond Borders, AI Partnerships for Inclusive Economic Transformation. Thank you, Dr. Nasser, Sabastian, for joining us today. So beyond, this is such a timely topic because, of course, it's not just about inclusive economic transformation, but this comes at a time of massive foreign assistance cuts, so, which are hitting a lot of emerging markets. There's that trickle-down cascade effect. But this also presents opportunities for public-private collaboration to drive innovation and growth, propelled by the advancements in artificial intelligence, which will hopefully benefit both businesses and local communities as well. So, Nasser, perhaps we can start with you. How is Ag Fund approaching AI to build institutional capacity and human capital in low and middle income countries, especially in sectors like health, education, financial inclusion, where the needs are greatest at the moment?
Yeah, thank you very much for this very important question. And you talk about it started challenging. Ag Fund been working almost for the last 4 decades, helping humanity, helping women and children all over the world, over almost 133 countries. We always look at that challenge, there is an opportunity. And this is what Ag Fund about it. So during the 90s, when we look at technology, internet, and also, we look at that as a challenge, and that's where we start thinking about this is an opportunity, and we look at the innovation and technology should work in the best of interest of humanity. Mm-hmm. So that's where we use all the technology and innovation and AI. How can we help human beings? Access to education, higher education, because we've been a champion in financial inclusive, higher education, and empowering community, as well as sustainable development. This is where we started with higher education, because as you know, higher education became now very expensive to normal people. So what we did during 2003, we take the curriculum from the British Open University, and we use what we call blended learning. We use internet, and now we use an AI. How can we make access to higher education to be accessible, affordable, and sustainable, no matter who paying the cost? That's where you want to have people have higher education access. This is where we are now using AI when you're teaching. Imagine today, I'm not saying we don't need the university, traditional university. No, we want to keep them, we need to empower them, but at least we need to use their curriculum, to use an AI to reach poor women in Africa, refugees. So through our program in the Middle East with the British Open University, we've been now in 9 Arab countries. Mm-hmm. We save more than 400,000 women, most likely, refugees, poor people, 70,000 already graduated. And by the way, from 143 countries. And that's where young people have access to such higher education, because higher education, as I said at the beginning, the second area, which is financial inclusion. Mm-hmm. When we started, by the way, in 2003, using mobile and payment and everything, nobody believed in that it could be as big as today. Today, by mobile phone, you could have an account. Your payment, your insurance, you even have that access to have all the information with all data for agriculture. Small farmer could often today have an insurance by phone. We cannot do this without technology and AI. And this is what makes this is accessible and also affordable. And this is why we want to take the advantage of the AI. How can we make life is better for poor people?
Sabastian, I think that's a good segue here. How is Salesforce leveraging cross-sector partnerships to bring AI-driven solutions to emerging markets? Yeah. Can you give us some examples?
Sure. And just thank you for this opportunity. I just want to come back to the framing you had highlighted about opportunities posing challenges and risks. So, when we think of ourselves at Salesforce, right, we're a global enterprise AI company, and the key opportunity, but also challenge for us in terms of how do we make this a priority is, are we a trusted partner at scale and not merely, a best-in-class provider? That's obviously important, to be a best-in-class provider. But how do you be a true partner? And how do you bring AI in particular responsibly, right, into developing markets? And how do you bring AI in particular kind of across, right, sort of in a very inclusive way? So it might be the small businesses, right? It might be, right, government. It might be, constituent services. You can just imagine, not only, we particularly, do power some of the largest enterprises, including in, developing markets, but we really try to take an ecosystem approach. And so, in Saudi Arabia, we recently announced, a $500 million sort of additional set of investments of how do we accelerate AI adoption? How do we drive, right, sort of strengthen, right, the ecosystem around this? And that was building actually on our work in the UAE. Dubai Internet City, and just more broadly, the work that we've been doing for a long time, in that region. And I loved your examples, with the Ag Fund around, is it farmers, right? Is it sort of all these sort of different sets of people, whether it's financial inclusion, right? Whether it's broader sets of access, but also, ensuring, farmers and the like have the data they need, because I don't know how many of you sort of actually in the farming sort of business or communities. The way in which these teams and families and communities actually either develop data, if we think of it as data, or rely on data, AI can be this incredible equalizer. And so, again, from the concept of partnership, is to bring any type of technology responsibly at scale requires really thoughtful relationships and partners, yes, with governments, with educational institutions, with local communities, with business, so that we all are kind of working, in the same way and moving in the same direction at scale, in trust, but also swiftly, because the technology is moving so fast and we don't want anyone to be left behind.
Yeah. Sebastian, staying with you, you mentioned the great equalizer. On the flip side, of course, AI has positive, huge, tremendous potential, but there are tremendous negative repercussions potentially as well in terms of widening the digital divide. How does Salesforce work to ensure that AI will have access, it won't become widen the digital divide between those who have access to it and those who do not? What are some of your thoughts on that?
Sure. Look, this is one of the greatest challenges, in this area. You think of artificial intelligence broadly. Yes, really great, I think, opportunities, but only if, in fact, right, we're able to develop it and deploy it in ways that are inclusive, right, that really kind of benefit all, and are really empowering. And so the reason I highlight that empowering point is when we think, look, artificial intelligence, of course, raises really important questions of trust, of risk, right, of ethics, and as you're saying, kind of broad-based availability. And so, when we think of empowerment, one of the ways when we think of how we develop, right, sort of our technology and deploy it, but in a very partnership, co-creating it sort of with, customers and community is, have you brought the communities in to the technology development and deployment and prioritization, process? Some of it is also our work of how do we think of upskilling and adoption. So we, for a long time, we developed, we call it our Trailhead curriculum, which we make available globally. And it's very practical set of skills development, training, creating then broader opportunities for people to participate in the economic prosperity that's going to come, sort of across this. And look, we do also really think about what's the kind of humane, responsible, ethical use, right, of technology. We actually have created a whole, global department, around that. And I think those are just some of the elements of how do you grapple, how do you seize the opportunities in ways that really think about the risks? Because if AI is going to be a great equalizer, trust has to be really kind of at the forefront, because look, my own view has actually long been that trust and innovation aren't really kind of polar opposites. I think trust can actually be much more of a propellant and accelerant. It's actually propulsion, because if you have communities, people of all sort of backgrounds really embrace and know that they can trust the technology, that's the only way you get to adoption. If you don't get to widespread inclusive adoption, then the level of the haves and the have-nots will just be exponentially much worse.
Yeah, absolutely starts with trust. So similar question, along similar lines, many communities that AgFund works with still face very huge infrastructure and skills gaps. How do you see AI working alongside more traditional development tools to close those gaps rather than widening them?
Yeah, we look at AI as an accelerator to scale up, as you mentioned. That's where we do wanna, exclude people when they have, challenge. So we wanna make sure, and by the way, during the General Assembly, there is a decision by the General Assembly those days that there will be an AI mechanism, and the United Nations will have independent, scientific panelists will help for good governance for the United Nations, and this is a good sign. But the challenge we face, if we have the accelerator, we don't want the AI, exclude anybody for the reason of infrastructure. We have to make sure that infrastructure is there. We don't want to, have the AI exclude because of connectivity. And this is one of the area we should have those people included. And by the way, one of the thing is happening for the growth during the financial inclusion, because this is an area we invest in it from the beginning with the mobile. It's happening after the crisis 2008. The G20 came at 2010 and said the only way we make a growth to include 2.5 people in the financial system. And the solution is nowadays, it took us almost 10 years to convince the regulator, and when they decided, they said, those people, we could include them as non-banking, because the traditional banking cannot even use it properly. That's why now non-banking is more or less. So we have to make sure the AI not to exclude anybody. That's where AgFund trying to even have access, and even during the, when we help poor women, when we give them a loan, now we build, telemedicine. And the telemedicine nowadays is available for the refugees in Jordan. And this is with a little money, they have access to the telemedicine, and they always have the service of that one. We could not do it without AI. And by the way, refugees who is having microfinance, that now, they already have the medical file. And that medical file, with AI, it's available for the refugees, even if they are refugees in a campus in area X or B, or go back to their country. And this would not happen without AI. So we have to make sure that AI, not to exclude anybody, should be inclusive for everybody. And by the way, we want to make it from AgFund, we want to make it accessible, affordable, and sustainable. We don't want AI to make things too expensive. And the only way we make it, accessible and affordable, if we use big numbers. And now with our, colleague, Professor Kramer, the Nobel Prize winner, with his approach experimental, to alleviate poverty, that's the only way to make that access to the poor people, to go with the AI and do this accessible for them. Because today, with insurance, imagine today that people in Africa have a microinsurance based on the data, agriculture, which is coming from the satellite, and the point is this: not enough to have the data. You have to create what we call product or services. And people could pay a little money, and instead of you just have 1,000 clients, you will have 1 million clients. And this is a different in terms of pricing. And this is you always do it when you make your pricing dependent your fixed cost and variable cost. Right. And it's become now with AI, it's almost similar. You increase the number, variable cost and fixed cost will go down. That's the way we're trying to include people, not to exclude people because of the challenge of the AI.
May I?
Yes, of course.
So, what you're also saying, and for everyone's benefit, is taking that beginner's mind to long-standing, right, economic and development principles, but really often coming up with what are the new financial models, right? What are the new operational, approaches? what might be possible from the development and growth and inclusion and prosperity perspective with this really kind of once in a generation type of technology that can let you go faster, go wider, go deeper if you're able to reimagine. And so for example, this sort of question, at Salesforce we were the first to announce and deploy an agentic AI, right, kind of global platform. We call it Agentforce. And Hyperforce for data residency. But the reason when we think of this Agentforce set of solutions is what are the right use cases? So we'll have our own thoughts. But what's been really a big unlock for us and communities and customers is we actually say, how do we get the best use cases from the communities? Right? So from the nonprofits, from the educational folks, and yes, from companies, but that's a way to have this really be empowering, particularly when we think of small businesses through our kind of growth Agentforce AI approach. These small businesses can now do much more. They can grow their revenue. They can grapple with items without creating the expenses, at the same level that often can really hurt the success and the longevity of small to medium-sized businesses.
I think that's a great note to end it on, a very positive note, because there are a lot of amazing potential transformations for not just business, small business, but local communities as well. So I want to thank you. Please join me in thanking our speakers. That's it.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.